June 24, 1886, London's Liverpool Street Station. A crowd gathers, horrified, cornering a man exhausted from travel and physically shrinking away from the public gaze. He can barely stand. His speech is rendered entirely unintelligible by severe facial growths, and he has been robbed of his life savings. When police finally intervene, the man produces his only possession, a small printed calling card bearing the name of a London surgeon. History often remembers this man by a cruel stage moniker, the Elephant Man, or by the incorrect first name, John. His actual name was Joseph Merrick. Pushed to the absolute edge of physical endurance and completely cornered by strangers, Merrick had finally reached the crisis point that would force the medical establishment to look past his appearance. The trajectory that led to that train station began in Leicester. At birth, Joseph Merrick appeared completely healthy. It was only approaching his 5th birthday that thick, lumpy skin began developing on his body, alongside a growing bony lump on his forehead. The situation at home deteriorated rapidly. When Merrick was 11, his mother died of bronchopneumonia. His father remarried, and Merrick found himself living with a stepmother who subjected him to daily taunts, withholding food and making his home life unbearable. Desperate to escape the abuse, a 17-year-old Merrick walked through the iron gates of the Leicester Union Workhouse in December 1879. The workhouse was an institution of last resort. Between the unyielding public stares, the loss of his hawking license, and a family that refused to feed him, society's total rejection had systematically removed his options to provide for himself in the outside world. To secure his own financial independence, Merrick realized human novelty exhibitions offered his only viable income. In 1884, he wrote to a local showman, proposing himself as an exhibit, intentionally stepping into the freak show circuit to buy his way out of the workhouse. This path eventually brought him to an empty shop across from the London hospital. Here, the young surgeon, Sir Frederick Treves, conducted a brief physical examination. Seeing Merrick's extreme deformities and frightened demeanor, Treves noted in his records that the patient was likely an imbecile. Around this time, the British public and local magistrates began shutting down these exhibitions on the grounds of decency. Facing mounting police pressure, Merrick's managers realized they could no longer display him in England and sent him on a tour across continental Europe. The European authorities were equally hostile. The tour collapsed in Brussels, where his manager stole his entire savings and abandoned him. Left to navigate ferry and train crossings alone, Merrick eventually stumbled back into Liverpool Street Station. He had originally leveraged the exhibition circuit to escape institutional poverty, fully aware of the transaction. Yet that exact same industry ultimately stripped him of his earnings and discarded him completely without a safety net. Recognizing the name on the calling card he presented at the station, the police summoned Treves. The doctor immediately brought Merrick back to the London hospital, admitting him for bronchitis and placing him in an isolated attic room. The hospital lacked the funds to care for chronic, incurable cases. Knowing this, the hospital's chairman wrote to the Times, detailing Merrick's situation. The ensuing flood of public donations provided enough financial backing to guarantee Merrick a permanent residence for the rest of his life. Staff converted 2 basement rooms adjacent to a quiet courtyard specifically for him. They installed a custom bed, brought in furniture, and, acting on strict instructions from Treves, ensured there was not a single mirror anywhere in the quarters. Shielded from the relentless stares of the public, and no longer forced to earn his daily survival through exhibition, Merrick was granted a physical space where he could finally exist without truly needing to manage the reactions of others. Free to focus on his own interests, Merrick spent his afternoons reading voraciously and constructing highly intricate, detailed models of cathedrals out of cardstock, which he routinely gave as gifts to those who visited him. Seeking to normalize Merrick's social interactions, Treves arranged for a young widow named Layla Maturin to visit the basement rooms. Warned in advance of his appearance, she entered, smiled at him, and shook his hand. Merrick later wept, telling Treves she was the very first woman to do either. Word of his residency spread through London's upper classes. He began hosting actors and aristocrats, holding long, articulate conversations. This social integration reached its peak when Princess Alexandra of Wales personally visited his rooms to sit with him and shake his hand. This diagram compares the historic and modern diagnoses of his condition. While early 20th century doctors suspected neurofibromatosis, characterized by flat, brown spots on the skin, Today's clinical consensus points to Proteus syndrome, an exceedingly rare condition that causes the asymmetric overgrowth of bones and skin tissue. The disease severely distorted his frame and inhibited his speech, but it left his mind completely untouched. Once the hospital provided a setting where his appearance was accepted, visitors quickly realized they were speaking with a sensitive, highly cultured intellectual. Over his 4 years at the hospital, Merrick's physical condition steadily declined. His head continued to enlarge, his energy faded, and he required increasingly intensive care from the nursing staff. On the afternoon of April 11, 1890, at the age of 27, Treves's house surgeon entered the basement quarters and found Merrick lying dead across his bed. During the autopsy, Treves determined that the massive weight of Merrick's head had caused his neck to dislocate, severing the vertebral arteries. The cause was mechanical. It happened strictly because he was lying flat. Because of his enlarged skull, Merrick had always slept sitting upright, resting his head on his drawn-up knees. Treves concluded that Merrick must have intentionally laid down on his back, fully aware of the physical risk. He survived extreme poverty, familial abuse, and public exploitation, holding on to his dignity through it all. But in the end, Joseph Merrick died from a quiet, deeply human desire to try just once to sleep like other people. It serves as a stark reminder of his favorite poem, "The mind, truly, is the standard of the man."